Good, welcome. So today's session is how to recession-proof your business. And today's session is, well, listen, the truth is there are many ways that you could do this. We'll focus on some key areas for you to improve your business and how to get ahead of your competition and be prepared for potentially tough times ahead. So a little bit about me. I've been part of Action Coach for 8 years and been coaching businesses of all shapes and sizes, and we're the world's largest business coaching firm. And I work with 4 other action coaches in Essex Central. And our focus is helping business owners of all sizes to be the best they can so they can have the best life and the best business. And listen, at the end of this, whether you're watching this live or you're watching this on recording, at the end of this, you'll have some ideas of how to make your business better prepared to beat the competition in the coming months. As I said, your job is just to make some notes, take part. And the more you take part, the more you participate, the better you'll learn. And at the end, you'll come to be in one of a couple of places. Either you've got enough to be cracking on with this yourself, and that's fair, off you go, or there might be a few areas that you're a bit unsure of and you just want a little bit of help with that. So that's fine too. So we'll give you a follow-up call after this webinar to see if you need to a half an hour session with me just to get some clarity on some of those areas. Either's fine with us. Just let us know. Cool. Okay, so a little bit about learning. And I don't know who's got anyone here with teenage kids or with kids in general. And what do kids know? Everything, absolutely. And when we get older, we tend not to say, yeah, I know. But what we do is we might just sort of be a bit more polite, put our arms together, lean back in a chair and say, yeah, I've seen this before. And what do you think's happening with our brain when we do that? When we see something that we've seen before and we give our brain that I know, what do you think's happening? Absolutely, definitely. So we're closing off our brain to potential information. Basically, our brain can't be on all the time. We can't be taking information in constantly. So any excuse just to switch off, I know, gives our brain a pause. But guess what? We miss stuff. And how many times I've read something or seen something or been to a course many times only to get it on the multiple time that I've been there. And having that, what we call a BFO, a blinding flash of the obvious. To help you overcome that, instead of saying, I know, you see something in this presentation you've seen before, and you might do, because there's no rocket science in this. Some of the stuff is stuff that you've done before, you might even be doing it, or you've heard of, but you've not done it. Either way, whatever you see, just say, isn't that interesting if it's something you've seen before? That allows your brain to stay open to the possibility of learning something new or a new way of doing something. So let's get on to the session. And I think it's important to understand that everything in life works in cycles, and the economy's no different. So times where you're in the springtime of your life or in your business is where everything's looking up, everything's going your way. There's the crazy summer where you're still working like crazy and you're thinking this is really great, but where are the crops? And then finally you reap the rewards in the autumn. You push through that summer period and you get to the autumn and you reap the rewards. That's when you take your fruits and your rewards from the business. But that doesn't last forever. And then you get to winter. You're working harder than ever. And those of you who have been around a little while, you'll know, you've experienced recessions before. It's an economic cycle which will continually happen in the environment that we have. But you're getting less of a return for your work. You're working hard, but for your time, your energy, and your effort, you're getting less and less reward. But the positive thing is that winter doesn't last forever, and things do get better. But what's important is what you do with your winter. How do you spend your time in your winter or preparing for your winter? Do you spend your time working on the business? And by on the business, I mean moving it forward, developing it, growing it, thinking about planning and developing the business? Or do you just carry on as usual, get weaker, and let others overtake you? Now, in America, the Fortune 500, 65% of the companies in the Fortune 500 companies were born in a recession. So these companies were started in difficult economic times. They had to fight hard to survive, to get going, and they're working stronger than ever. So it's definitely possible. You can do it. You need to be ahead of your competition. Now, 20% of doing this is about what you do. 80% is about mindset. So just want to have a quick look at yourself and where you need to focus before we get on to the strategy, the what you need to do. So I want to introduce you to the identity iceberg. You may have seen this before, but like an iceberg, our identity iceberg, or our identity, you only see a small proportion of the individual from outside. I only see 10% of you. And what I do see is I see the results that you're getting. I see the actions that you're taking, the decisions you're making, and maybe the behaviors that you're portraying. So this is the externally visible stuff in your identity. What I don't see is all the stuff below the surface. This is where the iceberg analogy comes in. Most of the iceberg, most of you is unseen. And that's things like skills, beliefs, values, identity, and the environment that you put yourself in. Now, because if you're watching this webinar, then you want to have something different. You want to be able to survive a recession and grow stronger than your competition, or something similar. Certainly, you've got ambitions to improve. So you want to have something different, but in order to have something different, you've got to first do something different. And that's where we're talking about your behaviors. So in order to have something different, you've got to do something different. So your behavior is driven by the actions and the decisions that you make. So if you decide not to act in advance, what impact might that behavior have on you and your business? And when things start to slow down, might you panic? Your behavior you might behave in different ways. Then your behavior could well impact those around you. Think about your team. How might they respond to your behavior if you're panicking because you haven't prepared for an economic downturn? Think about your customers. If you're less confident and your team are less confident, how might they behave? Where might they go? So preparing in advance will impact your actions, your decisions, and your behavior. That's what you're doing. Now, the biggest impact you can have is on you as an individual below the surface. What's below the surface will impact your behavior. Like we just said, learning skills from today, learning from a webinar like this on how to recession-proof your business. That's a skill. There's going to be some lessons here, some actions you can take to improve your skills in how to recession-proof your business. With skills is education. And when you educate yourself, you change your beliefs. Without education, it's very easy to have negative limiting beliefs that, a belief might be that in recession, businesses go out of business. There's not enough customers. There's not enough money. I won't survive. That's a limiting belief because we've already discussed that businesses can thrive and survive in an economic downturn. So as you learn, as you educate yourself, your beliefs will change. What we'll go on to learning is about how important your core values are in the business. and that'll impact the behaviors that how you behave and how your team behaves. And lastly on here, the identity. Identity is really the voice inside your head, what you say to yourself about yourself when you're by yourself. Whether you believe you can do something, whether you've got imposter syndrome. Identity rules all of the above. If your identity says you can't do it, then you're going to lack in confidence. Your team won't believe you, your customers won't believe you, and that'll have an impact as well. And all of this is surrounded by your environment. Your environment's key, depending on what you're feeding yourself. If you're feeding yourself negative news that you can do nothing about, and you're surrounding yourself with people who are naysayers and don't believe that you can do it, then guess what? You won't be able to do it. You will shrink. Much like an iceberg. If you took an iceberg from the North Atlantic and put it into the Indian Ocean, it would shrink. So we need to work on your environment, what you surround yourself with, what sort of information you digest. Work on your identity, values, beliefs, and skills. Number one here today is skills. Okay, we're going to work on that. And that is your B. So working on your B will have the biggest impact on what you have. You still need to do some different stuff. But if you want to have something different, you need to do some different stuff and be a different person. Let's move on to some specifics around the business then. And let me rephrase that. So who's ever come across a book called The E-Myth? The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. Okay, so the E-Myth is, I would recommend any business owner to read the E-Myth. Most people I give the book to come back to me and say that book could have been written about me and my business. The premise is it's really about why businesses fail and what to do about it. Now, the challenge with most business owners is that they are really good at what they do. So they're either good at what they do or they're doing something that they love. Either way, they got into business because they either got fed up of working for somebody else or that they got made redundant. And what happens is they're really good at the operations because they're great at what they do, but no one ever gives us training on how to be great at financials or marketing or the administrative side of the business or leadership or management or time management. None of these things are explained to us. But we're generally, our education system is designed to make us good at certain things. So what we're going to do today, and the idea for you, is to become stronger in all three of these areas and other areas of the business. And there's four ways we do this. In order for us to get results, the results that you want to recession-proof your business, we want to get strength in all of these these first four areas. I'll briefly go through them just now, and then we'll go through them in a bit more detail. So clarity on what needs to be done, planning. The power of plans is in the planning, not necessarily in the plan. Time to think outside of your business. Growth isn't linear. There's ups and downs, but it's having that time to be able to think about what is ahead and what we can do to change that. Become focused and productive. There's a great interview with Bill Gates and Warren Buffett where they were both asked, what's the secret to success? What's the secret trait to success? What do most successful people have? And they're two of the richest people in the world, right? And at the same time, they both said, focus on the right things. So we're going to talk a bit about that today as well. Action orientated. Action coach, we're action orientated. We're not just when we think about it, when we feel about it, coach. It's action coach. It's getting you to take actions. So do you hesitate on making decisions, or are you taking actions, or do you go right ahead and do it? So there's no bad decision, just indecision. Successful people in business fail, and they fail often. They learn from their failures and they don't do it again, and they move on and they're stronger. So better to make a decision and move on quickly than to wait around for indecision. Being visible, what I mean by this is having clarity and visibility on all areas of the business. So what we'll talk about here is dashboards, how you can get clarity and visibility on all areas of the business so we can see exactly where we are, good or bad, so we know what we need to do to improve it. The way I look at this is with numbers, is that numbers have the answers in business. They're the language of business and they'll give us the answers. The trouble is, unless we've got the data, we don't even know what questions we should be asking, let alone what the answers are. So we'll talk a bit more detail about that. So let's look at the first of these then, clarity. Just want to check that we're okay. Everybody's with me so far? Yeah, good. Okay, good. So let's move on to clarity. In Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, he talks about the first habit is being proactive. Proactive versus reactive. So what's the impact of being reactive in life or in business? Just in the chat box, just put there, what's the impact of being reactive in life or in business? Okay, yeah, so we're not in control. We're waiting for others to do something before we're responding to them. Absolutely, definitely. So if we're waiting to react, if we're waiting for a recession to happen, then it's going to impact us negatively. Whereas if we always win by being proactive, doing, as we mentioned before, better to make a decision than indecision, being proactive in life and in business. So first of all, let's look at the vision, mission, and culture of the business. So this is the destination. So the vision, some people might call it the big, hairy, audacious goal. Some might call it a purpose. But however you want to describe it, the vision, in my mind, is what's the one-liner, if you like. What's the long-term plan of the business? A simple one that I can bring to mind is Walt Disney's, which is make people happy. You know, that's a lens through which you can just view everything. Oh, we're just making people happy. That's great. So vision is the long-term goal. This is where we want to get. It could be as simple as we want to be the best in our industry, in our area. That's fine too. Mission is how we're going to do it. Who we work with, what sort of materials we use, what sort of customers we work with, how we do it. That's the mission, or what makes us unique. The culture, that's back to the behaviors. That's our core values. Who are the people that work for us? How do we behave? And when I mentioned earlier about the values, when your team are really clear about how they should be behaving, what the core values are, that's the lens through which they see everything. Every time they have a problem, they can see the problem through that lens. So we've got this problem with this customer. I know we're eco-minded, we're team focused, and we're professional. That might be 3 of your values. That's how we deal with this problem. So getting clarity on that also helps us when we're in time of recession and when things start to happen. Maybe we lose a supplier, we lose a customer. This will help us to address those problems with the long-term vision, mission, and culture in mind. Goals. How clear are we on goals? Goals for the next 5 years, 3 years, and 1 year. Now, some people, if they're in a tough time in the business, can't see it ahead as far as 5 years. I've had people who could only see 6 months ahead because they needed to sort the business out. But whereas possible, think as far ahead as possible. Dare to dream big. Think far ahead. 5 years is what you want. Dream big. You can achieve far more than you think in the long run, far less than you think in the short run if you think about what you put on your to-do list today. So think what you want in the long run, 5, 3, 1 year. When you know what you want in 1 year, where you want the business to be in 1 year, we can work back from there to make a quarterly plan. We can make 4 quarterly steps to get there. So the 90-day plan is a quarterly step towards that. And the action plan, that is how we're going to do it. That's who is doing what and when. And I'd encourage you to have one of these for all departments in the business. Everybody has a 90-day action plan, and it's reviewed weekly. Hold people account to their to their action plan. So if we just summarize in this section briefly, if your team aren't clear on what they want, what you want to achieve, then how can they help you get there? Cool. So that's clarity. So any questions on clarity? Really, we're just with clarity, we're getting super clear on where we're headed and having a plan on how to get there. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just about the plan. The plan can change. You see in the picture behind there, our wall planners for our clients, they have post-it notes so they can pick it up and move it in case they can't get it done. But the power of plan comes in the time you spend to have that thinking time once a quarter to plan the business. Good. Okay, so let's move on. Focus. So who's heard of the 80-20 rule? The 80-20, often called the Pareto principle, from the Italian business philosopher in the 16th century. So, okay, good, excellent. So let me just briefly explain. So what he discovered is that 20% of your activity will give you 80% of the results. So, and equally, 80% of your activity will only give you 20% of your results. So do you want to be busy or effective? Now, an interesting fact is that a lion in the wild can actually capture, kill, and eat a field mouse. Believe that? But it turns out that if he did that, the actual calories he'd get from eating the field mouse are less than the effort he'd put into actually catching it. So if a lion did keep chasing field mice, then slowly he would fade away and he'd die. They're designed to eat antelope. Antelope give them far more energy, far more food for them to feed themselves and their whole pride. So in business, if you're spending all of your time and energy going after field mice, your short-term rewards are feeling of activity, I'm busy, people are doing stuff, maybe even accomplishment, but then in the long run, your business will suffer and perhaps even die. So think about what are the field mice that you're currently chasing? Should you be chasing them or working with them? Or who are the antelope that you need to be focusing your time on? Now, let me make this a bit more specific and show you what I'm talking about. So let's talk about people, top performers. There'll be people in your business who are the best performers, and there'll be people who are less well performing. Let's say you've got a team of 5 salespeople. What I often see is that 1 will be great, 1 will be bad, and 3 will be just average. So how do you reward the best one and bring the others up to that standard? So who are the people who are just averagely performing, and how do you raise them? And the people who are not performing, how do you either raise them or let them go? If you've got somebody in your business who is like that, they're not performing, you know they're not performing, but they think they're a superstar, that's an indication of poor management. And so you've got to hold the mirror up to yourself and say, well, what part am I playing in this? Whether it's yourself or your managers. If somebody thinks they're better than they are, then they're not being managed, they're not being told. So we need, and a great book for that, by the way, is The 1 Minute Manager. Super great book. It's just about, you listen to it on audio book in about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And it's 3 main principles: 1 minute goals, 1 minute praising, and 1 minute redirect when they're not doing what they should be doing. So really making sure the 1 minute goal is making sure they know exactly what they're meant to do and how to do it. Praising is catching them doing something right. People are motivated by praise, not by sticks. And then if they do go wrong, then tell them straight away. Don't leave it. Don't put it off. Definitely don't wait till their appraisal or whatever. Tell them right away. Reinforce with them how much you know that they're better than this and that you've got their back and you look forward to them being better next time. Super simple lesson on management, and it's really powerful. Get that book, or let me know if you want to know some more about that. So that's performers. So how do we make the most of sort of improve and reward the best and let go or manage the least performing? Then let's have a look at customers. What about customers? So I've got a plasterer client who's plastering business, had some great clients, but also had some clients who bartered with him, batted down on price, didn't pay on time, often caused problems on the job. He decided to get rid of those clients because they were costing him money and time. Better to refer them to his competitors and let them waste their time, make limited profit, and let him go after his better customers, his A-grade customers, who are a pleasure to work with. They pay you higher prices, they pay you on time, and your team get motivated because they enjoy working with them. So when you find your A-grade client, you could look at this for some sorting out your target market. So identifying a bit more about your target market, because your A-grade clients, the people that you want, right? People are fun to work with, pay you the most money, etc. So what are the similarities that you can see in these? Can you see similarities in their geography, in their demographics, their age, the size of business? This is your target market. So the more information you can find out about them, the more you'll know. The more you'll know what they do, where they like to hang out, where they like to listen to, where they like to read, and that makes it easier for you to market to them. So really key for you, for your marketing, to know as much about your target market as possible. When you've got a better idea about them, it makes it easier to find. Also, your top customers or any of your customers, look at your customers. What are they buying? Do a magic matrix, we call it, where you list all your customers down one side and all your products or services along the top, and then just tick off who's having what. And where the gaps are, that's your opportunity to sell more. We want wallet share from each customer, not necessarily market share. So how can we use our sales and some information to sell more to the people that are already buying from us? Now, remember, when we're talking about sales, we want to be asking great questions, uncovering needs, so that we only sell to somebody something that they need. But if they already like us, they're going to be receptive to our communication. Great way for you to find more, because I bet a lot of the people you're working with, your customers, don't know all the products and services that you do. Then we're on to top goods and services. So I've got a client right now who's measuring the profitability of the jobs that they're carrying out. Simply put, they quoted what they've quoted versus what the actual is. So the cost of the materials and the labor versus what the actual was. The first job we checked found £3,500 loss, or he'd made less than what he expected to. How quickly do you think he changed his processes? So we've really got to have a clear idea on what's making money and what's not, so that we can adjust that, but also make more profit. So that takes us on nicely to visibility then. So when we're talking about visibility, we're talking about how clear are we on the key areas of the business. Actually, let me just come back to that previous slide. I just want to make sure that I don't move on before. So is everybody clear on the focus? So what we're talking about here is focusing on the best people, so that we get more of the best people, focus on the best customers, so we have more of the best customers, and focus on the goods and services. Any questions on that? Cool. Okay, excellent. So visibility. So let's have a look at visibility. So I call this a dashboard. You can call it whatever you like. It's really having the key metrics in your business clear, not just available, but visible. So some people will have data, some people won't have data, but very often people don't have either visible to everybody all of the time. By the way, I've got an ebook on this called Educate Without Dramas: How to Produce a Really Meaningful Dashboard in Your Business to Motivate Your Team. So in the chat box, put dashboard if you want that sent to you. So, okay, so let's talk about dashboard for the business. So what are the key metrics that you need to know in your business to make it visible? So just put in the chat box, what are the key metrics that you're measuring in your business? Okay, so yeah, so we've got profit, great, sales, turnover. Excellent. Yeah, more on profit. Leads, yeah, another good one. Well, I'm really glad you mentioned that conversion rate. It's amazing how few people are measuring their conversion rate. Got a question here, Katie. What should I measure in my business? Great question, Katie. So, listen, it depends from business to business. I would say gross profit is a great place to start. If you're not measuring your cash or having a cash flow forecast, that's a great place to start as well. Depends what the problem is. If you've got a problem with getting new business in, then maybe you start measuring your marketing, your leads, how well you're converting that. Maybe looking at the jobs you are getting and measuring the profit that you're getting on that, so that you're focusing on getting more for the same amount. Okay. So what sort of things should we be measuring? Let's have a look at some other things. So inventories, know your stock, sales, each step of the sales process. So right from when somebody raises their hand to being interested in you all the way through to when you do the work. Measure each step of the sales process, because we want to see what the conversion rate is for each step of the sales process. We'll come on to that in a bit more detail in a bit. Marketing, revenue, and as I mentioned, profits, and focus on the net profit. You know, what can you do to reduce your costs, but also how can you expand the other end to maximize your profit overall? Gross profit is a great place to start, because your overheads probably won't change a great deal. If you focus on it, you might get a 10% reduction, which is great and essential that you do that. Renegotiate with your suppliers. Client this morning was just having a conversation with suppliers, explaining that he's looking to expand, and this is what it could mean for them in business in the future. What could they help him with in the short term? And they've given them an extra couple of months free on their subscriptions for their clients. So really great deal he got. So almost like 10% off just through asking the question. So do that with your costs, certainly, but the time you spend on your costs, you'll probably get a far better return on how you can improve, say, your gross profit margin, how you can improve your efficiencies, how can you buy better, how can you put systems in place to make things more efficient, measure people to improve your gross profit. So that's the business. So let's think about the individuals then. So a little story. So during the 1900s, a guy called Charlie Schwab was a steel tycoon and had many steel mills producing massive amounts of steel. And he wanted to increase the production of steel in his workforce in one of his mills, but none of the methods that had worked, not even like threatening to fire some of the team. So he devised a simple plan to stimulate good old-fashioned competition. And he went to see the day shift at the end of their shift one day, and he asked, "How many heats have you made today?" And they said 6. So he got a bit of chalk and he wrote this number 6 on the floor. Without a word, he just he walked off and he was gone. Then when the night shift came in, they saw this big 6 on the floor and they asked what it meant. And the day shift said, "Well, the big boss was here today. He asked how many heats we made. We told him 6. So he chalked it on the floor." The next morning, when the day shift came in to the mill again, the night shift had rubbed out the 6 and replaced it with a big 7. So the night shift are better than the day shift, were they? This is what the day shift's thinking. So we'll show them, they said. So the crew pitched in with enthusiasm and got going. By the time they'd finished, they'd written a 10 on the floor. So it's just an interesting story about the power of when people get together off of their own motivation. They weren't told to do anything. They decided to. What's the power in that? So, well, before too long, you know, that in that example, they were one of the top mills in his group. So it worked. People naturally move towards a goal. So have regular reviews on performance, discuss the numbers in public, praise good performance. If someone's not performing, then talk to them about what they think that they need to do to achieve that, but talk to them in private and talk to them about the challenge, about the underperformance as a separate issue. So in other words, instead of saying they're the problem, talk to them together about how they solve the problem together. And like I mentioned, if you want, I've got some people there. Yeah, so we'll get that out to you. So that's the Educate Without Drama, the short ebook. Again, if you want that, then put dashboard into the chat box. Great. Okay, so we've got the clarity, we've got the focus, action, visibility. Let's have a look about how we create loyalty during difficult times. So we want loyal customers, and this is the ladder of loyalty. If you have to get a new customer every time you make a sale, then life's too hard. How can you get them coming back time and time again? Repeat business equals profit. So, by the way, who has to get some people coming back time and time again in their business? Oh, okay, so we're not many, but in that being your business, how can you do a recurring revenue for some of your existing people, existing customers? So let's talk about the ladder of loyalty and how we can increase that loyalty. So at the beginning of the ladder of loyalty, we've got a suspect. Now, a suspect is somebody who's in your target market. We identified earlier on from our best paying customers who our target market is, and that's a suspect. So how do we have to go and find those, produce a database of these types of customers. We know the geographic location, the demographic, etc. Produce a database of these people. These are the people we're going to market to. You might have multiple target markets, and which is good because you could have a specific message to each of those target markets. You might even have a target for each different product and a different message for each product. We want to have a plan around our marketing so that we get that message across. So once we've got our message across to our target market, eventually somebody will raise their hand and they'll say, hey, I'm interested in what you do. They might click on your website, they might phone you up, or they might come in and see you. But they've made a conscious effort to say, yeah, I'm interested in what you do. So first of all, we need to differentiate these from the suspects, because if they're on a database, we want to segregate them from the suspects because we want them now to be getting a different marketing message, whether it's an email or whatever it is. We want them to get a different marketing message. So that's the first thing, identify the prospects separately. But we also want to get them to buy. So how do we convert them? How do we get them over the line? And with our marketing, it's testing and measuring. So this is where we want to have our sales process documented. So when somebody clicks on a website, when somebody phones us up or comes in to see us, what next? And then what next? And what next? A good way is to work backwards from when they've bought something. When they're a shopper, when they've made a purchase to us, that's the purchase. What's the step before that? Okay, so we've had a phone call with them to agree the price. What's the step before that? Maybe we've sent out a quote. What's the step before that? Maybe we've had a phone call to arrange the time to go out and see us. What's the step before that? Maybe we've had a communication via email. You'll know what each of the steps are. The trick, though, the important thing with your sales process is to document that and then measure each step. So at this end of the funnel, we've got lots of people that are prospects. And at this end of the funnel, we've got less shoppers, people who are buying from us. Somewhere in the middle, people have fallen out because they didn't want to buy from us. So during that sales process, we've got multiple opportunities for either us to convince them to buy or for them to decide they don't want to buy from us. And people will decide they don't want to buy from us for multiple reasons. They will decide that they don't, or people will make a judgment on you from the smallest things. They might not know how you install solar panels. They might not know how you do what you do, but they do know what a quality leaflet feels like, or they do know what a nice website looks like. They'll judge what you do as a service or a product by what they know. So if they see something, if they phone up to you and you don't like the way you answer the phone, don't like the way you talk to them, don't like some of the correspondence you send them, whatever it is, there's multiple ways they decide that they won't buy from you. So we've got to look at this sales process to see at what point are most people falling out of bed and not buying from us. So anyway, we've made a purchase now. We've managed to get them over the line and they're shopping with us. They've bought once. Excellent. However, from a loyalty perspective, there's not much loyalty there at all. They've bought from us once, and really, if they see the same product or service priced slightly cheaper, they could very well go there instead. So we've got to get them to buy a second time. Why is that? Because the second time they buy, they're 9 times more likely to stay with us again, to keep coming back. So what do we do to get them to come back and be a customer and buy from us regularly? Well, do we ask them to come back? Do we thank them for their purchase as a shopper and then ask them to come back? Do we write to them a nice letter or a card or an email or a text to get them coming back? Do we send them an offer to get them coming back? By the way, thank you very much. You have this off your next purchase. You know, you've seen that when you get a delivery and you get an offer, you have this much off your next purchase. So great, we've got them coming back, and now there's a little bit of loyalty there. So how do we really make them feel like they're part of us? Now, has anybody here ever had a customer leave them and not come back? Yeah, yes, we've all had that, haven't we? Where people or customers will leave us and they're never to be seen again. Now, stats say that the main reason why people leave, it's not because they don't like your prices, it's not because they died, it's not because well, there is an element of that, but it's a small percentage of all these reasons. The largest reason why people leave, 68% of people leave for perceived indifference. By the way, that's the same with staff or team members, the same sort of numbers. They leave for perceived indifference. What does that mean? It means they perceive you don't care. Doesn't mean you don't care, but it means the perception is that you don't care. So you haven't communicated enough with them. That's why people have left. So we've got to get a customer to feel like they're a member of our organization. How do we get them to feel like they're cared for and they're looked after? Could we send them a membership pack, something to greet them and say, as a valued member, you've bought from us multiple times, you now get this preferential treatment. You now get access to your customer service advisor, which is Jane over there. Her number is da 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 da. Do we give them special offers? Do we let them know our full product and service? Do we give them a VIP membership? What do we do to make them feel like a member and they're coming and they're part of it? Think about Apple and Android. You know, people are either Apple or Android. On the whole, 80% of people are either Apple or Android, aren't they? And they probably wouldn't change between the two because they're invested. Probably the biggest members or the most crazy members or fanatical members are Harley Davidson members. You know, they're so passionate about their brand that they'll even get tattoos of Harley Davidson tattooed on their body because they're really committed to that brand. So how can you learn a bit of that and get people coming back? One of the things in a membership pack that we do is we want to show people the importance of referring business to us, why it's important to us, why we value it, and why it's potentially important to them. So if they enjoy our service, our products or service, What can they do to get more of their friends? And why is it important to get more of their friends? When they do, when somebody's asked to refer and they do, they're an advocate. And we need to give them something to be able to shout about. Certainly with today's social media and online, we want people to enjoy the experience and share it on their social media. People want an excuse to do that. So we need to make sure that we're again, going back to a process, we're developing that customer journey process. We're understanding each step of the customer journey and how to create a wow during that. So things like critical non-essentials, CNEs. A guy called Paddy Lunn, a dentist in Australia, wrote a book about these, and he made an incredibly successful referral-only dentists, where people paid a huge amount of money to work with him, but the only business he got was through referrals. People had to give referrals to him. So incredibly successful business. And one of the things he focused on was critical non-essentials. And what these are, they're critical, but they're not essential. They're not essential for you to do the business, but critical if you really want to have advocates and grow beyond. So what sort of things might they be? They might be capturing data about your customers, their birthday, what their favorite things to do are, what their partner's birthday is, and what their partner's name. Maybe you can then send out gifts for their birthday or for their partner, and maybe if you know what they really enjoy, maybe you could send them out. If they really love whiskey, you could send them out a bottle of whiskey for a special occasion. These are really going above and beyond, creating a wow. These are critical non-essentials, and this is what will transform your advocate into a raving fan. Now, a raving fan is somebody who will just go out and do your selling for you. They'll completely just tell everybody who's even got a pulse how great you are. You know, we've had examples of that where people have had an incentive for referring, and they've basically had all of their own purchases paid for because they've got a reward for every referral they gave. They just kept giving referral after referral after referral. So things to think about here: customer service. How do we get? Okay, let's take a step back there. Customer service. Whenever I ask a business what makes them different, they'll always say customer service. Customer service, are we satisfying or are we delighting? Again, with a customer journey, every step of the way, how do we create a wow? That's something that people aren't expecting. Break it down, brainstorm with your team. How do we create a wow? So when we send the product out here and the customer gets it, what could we do? Maybe the packaging changes. Maybe we hand deliver it. Think about the profitability in each business, in each customer, and what's that worth for you? And well, are you pricing it right? But at the higher end, what's the profit that you're making, and what can we afford to do with this to really create a wow, to get them to turn into a raving fan, so they send us more customers like that. So customer service really has to be above and beyond. Think outside the box. Don't just think about your industry. Think, what are people doing in other industries? Who are creating the biggest wow? What about your customer service experience? Where have you experienced it in another industry? Or look at your industry, but in another country. What are they doing there? We used to call it at school copying. In business, it's market research. Think about complaints too. Are you getting complaints? If you are you jumping on it? That's an opportunity to really create a wow if somebody's complaining. The ability for you to shine at that point is really powerful. You can often turn a complaint into a raving fan just by listening to them, because they complain often because they don't feel like they're listened to. Lost my train of thought there, but delivery of your product and service, this is what we want to process, to put a process in place. Get that consistency. We want consistency every time, creating a wow, but we want a way to almost generate customer complaints. If you're not getting complaints, then are you asking well enough? Are you doing customer surveys? Are you understanding exactly where it's not 110%? So listen, I've done a lot of talking just there. Let's do any questions just on that. Well, I'll move on. Okay, so what we've covered today, we've covered the ladder of loyalty, which just mentioned, but we've also looked at getting focus in those three areas: clarity, focus on the right things, action orientated, and visibility. Get those four things right. That's when you get the results that will see you through recession and all sorts of times, good and bad. So look at your notes. Hopefully you've got some notes from what we've talked about today. What are the top three things that you've taken from your notes today? Jot those down. And then finally, what's one action that you can take from this to improve your business? Listen, I've been Nick Gray. It's been a pleasure to have you on the call and those who are watching the recording. Until next time, speak to you soon.